In this morning, at this time, I invite each and every one of you to join me with Spirit, to just allow the universe to just wash away all that no longer serves you. If you feel so inclined, go ahead and take a nice deep cleansing breath in, breathing in a cool, calming life. And as you release the breath, release all that no longer serves you. Go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in, allowing your body to just relax in this moment. And as you release the breath, allow your mind to be here, now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself up to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own, for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender.
I surrender.
Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive.
I forgive.
Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose.
I choose.
I now center upon that one very special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept.
I accept.
Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release.
I release.
Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This could be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in this room or on this planet anymore. I turn to that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life.
I'm grateful for the good.
Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude in saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
A talk like this, I know what I want to say. I know where I want to go. I know the impression I want to leave. And how I'm going to get there, and when I'm going to get there, I haven't a clue. So I've been going over this and over this in my mind, try to make this point to conclude this series, which is about the collective memory of a lost paradise, a past golden age that we find from culture to culture across the planet. And how does that influence us today, and how does that speak to our teaching and our use of the principles of this science of mind teaching of ours? So I'm going to wrap that up today, and you'll hear more about this in the announcements. But next week, you're in for a real treat because Reverend Arthur Johnson's going to be here. And Reverend Arthur, it doesn't matter what the series is. Reverend Arthur is a standalone kind of guy. Standalone, but he stands strong. No one stands alone, but his teaching is a bright and shining pillar of fire, really. Please come be in his presence next week. I would if I could. It's very often online, a wonderful time you have at home with your breakfast and your family and relaxing in your PJs. But if there were ever a Sunday to be in the room, it's with this man. So I hope those of you who are watching at home will join us. Those of you who are in the room today will come back next week for this. But now on with what I have to say. So I was thinking, I wanted to work this into the talk at some point, and I think I'll start with this. It's the difference between show business and cookies. Show business and cookies. A man made his transition this week off the planet I want to tell you a little bit about because he was a remarkable individual. He moved to New York City. He grew up in Florida, but he moved to New York City, and he went to secretarial school, and he got a job with the William Morris Talent Agency as the first African-American talent agent that they had. And he discovered and represented Marvin Gaye and the Temptations, and even Simon and Garfunkel back in the day. And he could have had a long career doing this. But he had another dream that had to do with cookies. And he moved to California, and he got a loan from Marvin Gaye to set up a cookie business on Sunset Boulevard called Famous Amos. This is Wally Amos, who just passed at the age of 88. Why I'm bringing Wally Amos up to you? His story is remarkable and it's well worth the read, but Wally Amos was one of us. Wally Amos was a religious scientist. Wally Amos was a New Thought student and teacher. He spoke at the Huntington Beach Church of Religious Science. He spoke at the Asilomar Conference. And he made a decision to follow his heart in a certain direction that somebody would have said, well, you know, that's a huge risk. And he had some ups and downs with it. But in the end, he was noted not only as a successful business person, but as one of America's great advocates for literacy. He created a reading program and funded it for children that exists to this day that has helped countless people. So today is about, I guess, this. Things don't go in the direction you expect them to. And a way to get ahead of that is to practice mental reverse engineering. What if I have everything not just a little bit skewed in my understanding of cause and effect? What if I have everything exactly, precisely backward? We were speaking the other night in a group about the distinction between being a human being and being a human doing. Many of us have been trained to be human doings, to produce something into the world, thinking that this will grant us value. The idea that we are first and foremost and always human beings implies that we have value to begin with, that we're then extending and expressing through whatever it is we happen to do. We have been trained to think that if we have enough of something, we'll be able to do something useful with it, and therefore we'll become somebody. Metaphysics tells us that we start out being the expression of spirit in and through our lives. And as we do something with that awareness, all these things are added unto us. If we seek first the kingdom of God as it's expressed in Scripture and its righteousness, or as I heard it put recently, the kingdom of God. K-I-N, dumb. Isn't that beautiful? I love that. I need to find out for you, unless they beat me to it, which they probably will here online, where that originated. I saw it quoted in a book it's not original too, but the kingdom, the family of spirit. Seek first the family of spirit. Seek first that kinship relationship, and all these things will be added unto you. And here we thought, and here we went ahead and thought, you know, if only I had more stuff, I'd have more friends, I'd have more power, I'd have more sway, more influence. But I am the expression of the only power there is to start with. And that's the understanding that I must grow into. So today is called the root of the sacred tree, and this comes out of world mythology and religion. It's the axis mundi. It's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that you carry with you. And esoterically, this tree, you know what this tree is? This tree is your spine and your nervous system. This tree is your interpretive faculty. And wherever you've heard the expression, wherever you go, there you are. Wherever you go, there this tree is rooted. And a garden forms around you. A circular space opens up, and you become the center of your own village, center of your own territory. This knowledge of good and evil is something we've been taught was denied to us, forbidden to us. And we broke that rule, and we disobeyed the deity by accessing this information, when in fact, esoterically, it was necessary to happen for us to have free will. And if anything is worth attaining, it's only worth attaining through free will, through the awareness that you don't have to do this certain thing. If you have to do a certain thing and you go ahead and do the certain thing, there's not a great expansion of character to it like there is when You have a field of available options and you choose one. And that option that you choose then stands out to you in living color, and everything else sort of recedes into the background, into shades of, kind of beige, or gray. But you select something, and it comes into focus for you. You've made a choice there. And you can always choose once again. If you don't like the choice you made, it doesn't take you where you want to go, then you refine the choice and you keep choosing and so on. And each choice, by the way, is a judgment. And how we've heard, I'm getting ready to do a Bible class coming up starting the end of September. And one of the things that we'll talk about in there is how we've heard, well, don't judge. You shouldn't judge. And I know in shorthand I've even said that too in talks. Let's not judge. But the full story is to judge righteous judgment. Because we're always judging. We're always judging. Oh, you can put a nice spin on it and say, well, it's not really judgment, it's discernment, it's discretion. These are semantic distinctions. Call it like it is. It's judgment. What it doesn't need to be is condemnation. It's just a judgment. It's just a peculiar turn of the light that you distinguish one thing, one reality from another. But in our rush to judgment, very often what we do is we set up pairs of opposites. And I spoke to you a couple of months ago about reconciling pairs of opposites. It's not always easy to do, but it's well worthwhile. Everything exists on the same continuum as its opposite number. Cookies and show business. Two completely disparate things. Somehow, in one man's life anyway, existed on the same continuum. Wealth and poverty exist on the same continuum. Illness and wellness, and so on. To move from a point on that continuum to a different point requires an increase in the rate of personal vibration. Not physically necessarily, but mentally, emotionally. Excitement, enthusiasm. The word enthusiasm is derived from the Greek. It means in God, in entheos. So we grow in excitement and enthusiasm. We raise our vibration and we move in a positive direction on the scale toward greater acceptance. We widen, as Holmes says, our mental equivalents. Our mental equivalents. What's your idea of a good day? Think about that. Sit with that. What's your idea of personal creativity? Sit with that. Think about that. Engage yourself in that idea, and your mental equivalents widen. If just sitting there doesn't do it for you, read a book. Watch a movie. Have a conversation with people. Hang out with people who are doing things that you find interesting, even if they're not exactly the things you want to do or you don't know how to do them right now. And your mental equivalents widen. And all of a sudden, there's more room for you. All of a sudden. There's a particular way of being for you. All of a sudden, as Emerson said, a channel opens up in front of you. As all rivers run to the sea, now you're conducted. You're sort of conducted into greater and greater expression because you've widened your mental equivalents. I ran across something a while back. I couldn't tell you where. It was one of these sort of, at the time, kind of a throwaway observations somebody made about trees. And it said that a tree, the business end of a tree, how they know this, I don't know, but where the attention of a tree is really directed is at the end of it that's working on its roots. In other words, you and I think the tree's here to entertain us. It's here to give us shade. It's here to give us fruit. Ooh, isn't it pretty? It's reaching up to the sky. But the tree, in the tree-like consciousness, and I guess they figure this out behaviorally, not through, interviews or something, but the tree in sending down its roots to find water, that's the part of it that's really grasping and growing and seeking. And that changed forever my understanding of trees. I can't tell you that this is absolutely true, but it was turning things in reverse. And I got to thinking about how to apply this to me, how to apply this to life, okay? Here's another mind bender for you. And this is purely hypothetical, what I'm about to say. But what if the real life of you and me was in our dream state? What if that was, and you've probably heard this idea floated before, but what if you have a big Jungian kind of dream? You know, Jung talked about big dreams, and that's where it's cast of thousands. People you know, people you don't know, and there's usually a journey of some kind. There's a quest, an errand, you know, that you're on, and you're trying to get there, and it seems to take all night. You wake up, you've had a nap. You know, in 20 minutes this whole thing has unfolded. It twists time, just like in, you know, in fantasy literature you find this thing too. Well, what if what you're doing there with those people in that space is your real work? And this is the dream. Now, I'm not saying this to disturb anybody. I'm not saying this to change all behavior. But if you look at things that way for a while, all of a sudden you get kind of a greater perspective. It's like, whoa. And the line between either and or sort of fades away. And you start to occupy more territory. Now you can take possession of the dream state. There's a poem by Coleridge, I think, he talked about. Neville Goddard, if you've read Neville Goddard, he touched on this, brought this up, alluded to the poem by Coleridge. And I love this idea. I never thought of this kind of thing. Coleridge said what, I can't quote it verbatim, but the gist of the thing was, what if each night when you went to sleep, you dreamt of a red rose? And each night when you slept, you dreamt more clearly and more extensively of this red rose, to the point where one morning when you woke up, you held that rose. And you had carried it from the invisible, intangible dream state into physicality, where we call things real. Now that's kind of trippy, isn't it? But then think of this. This is what we're doing all the time. I didn't have a this, and now I do. Where did it come from? I didn't have a body at one point. Neither did you. And when you first did, it was a little bitty thing. When you first emerged into this world, right? And it grew. How? How did it attract a molecular structure to it that caused it to bulk up into you? All the while, your brain processing more information, your mind interpreting what the brain was registering through the senses, all of this got more perfected and tweaked, you know, until now you're a very competent grown-up human. You're able to do all sorts of things. You can multitask. You can think in the abstract. You can wonder about things. You can imagine things, for good or ill. You can create suffering for yourself. You can sit here in a perfectly wonderful space and imagine, well, what if something terrible happened? And then you can notice that you're doing that. And you can withdraw the emotional attachment to an outcome that you don't prefer. And in a way, actually sort of vaccinate yourself against this. This is what I like to think happens when we go into negative judgment. We're vaccinating ourselves. My mother used to give me advice. She was not what you would think of as your standard metaphysical type person. But she sort of was, in a roundabout way. And when I was a little kid, she said, if you're ever worried about stuff, imagine the worst that could happen. That doesn't sound very metaphysical, doesn't it? Ooh, back away from that. She said, no, imagine the worst that could happen. And are you still standing after it does? Are you still all right after? And you know what? Then where did your dread go? Courage floods you. Strength, sure, I can deal with that. That's a better outcome, isn't it? Than, oh, I can't think about that. I can't go there. We were talking about this the other night too. You know, oh, that's negative. Don't think about it. Don't look at that. Don't think about that. Well, all of a sudden, you know what it is? It's this lurking thing. It's the elephant in the room that you can't think about. Because if God help you if you do, because it'll eat you up. Well, that's just another form of dread. You might just as well believe in two competing powers. But if you look the thing right in the face, you know who else said this? Ernest Holmes. He said, we look at conflicting fact in the face and see the truth behind it. That's in the Science Mind textbook. A discordant, that's the word he used. A discordant fact. We look at discordant fact in the face and see the truth behind it. What is the truth behind it? Nothing ever ends. What is the truth behind it? Life is eternal. The ancients believed that the bad place after death is down there, and the good place after death is up here. Most of them, not all of them, and particularly in Western theology, Western, what do you call it, eschatology, or philosophy of an afterlife. Down here is, you know, where bad people who have made bad choices go. Why down here? Because that's the place of decay. That's the place of, well, mortality, ending, dissolution. Why the good place up there? Because it's the place of clouds and breeze and freedom, like the birds have, you know? And so we thought, well, heaven's up there. All good things are up there. We must strive for that. We must reach for that and ignore what's down here. Kind of stomp on it, you know, because it's restrictive and even evil. Well, to reverse engineer this thinking, imagine that heaven grows up. Heaven grows up from the ground. And the upward movement of that extends through us out into space is not a yearning for something that is not, but is a celebration of something that always is. It's a celebration of life. It's a celebration of humanity and all life everywhere. And to think of it in that direction is really the point of all of New Thought. When we say that there's nothing wrong with creation, that some refined choices won't fix, that some greater love won't fix. So a few weeks ago, I recited to you out of the book of Genesis, and to take it to this particular point where, and their eyes were open. It's Adam and Eve, right? Metaphorical, Adam and Eve. Their eyes were open, and they discovered they were what? Naked. And they were what? Ashamed. They were ashamed. So we look at that and we say, well, that's not a smart move. So what could have happened better? What could have happened better was that their eyes were not opened, and they did not discover they were naked. And then everything would have been just great. Except their eyes wouldn't have been opened. They'd have been groping around in ignorance. That's not an answer. How about this? Their eyes were opened, all right, and they discovered they were naked. Not a problem. And they were not ashamed. They said, so what? We're naked. As the day we were born. Big deal. That's righteous judgment. You see? To me, that's right. Righteous judgment is not a flaming sword and all of this kind of. That's the metaphorical representation of it. But righteous judgment is, I made a mistake. Okay, I'm not a mistake. I have suffered in my life. Okay, life is not about perpetual suffering. I've had a hard time, but I don't have to obsess on that. I don't have to generate further hard times to make the point. We humans have the capacity to suffer so greatly by envisioning realities that are not yet so and polluting the present with them. Imagining futures we do not wish to occupy. And in so doing, we learn, whoop, that didn't work. I mean, as Holmes puts it, it works by not working. Right? If I believe that I'm limited, the law of mind will create for me a limiting experience, not in punishment at all, but to teach me my own use of that law. If you do this, that happens. It's just like, I gave a talk on a Wednesday night one time, and I should dig out the notes for that. So it's called the personal fork in the spiritual toaster. And it went to this point, you know. It's like, well, that didn't work, except it did. It worked. It wasn't pleasant. That doesn't mean it didn't work. It worked by doing what the fork and the toaster interaction sounds like would happen. You get the idea here. So to not judge is a very high bar to try to leap over. Even Jesus Christ couldn't do it. He had judgment. He, let this cup pass from my lip. The money changers' tables in the temple, this kind of thing. He got angry. He got sad. He got scared. He got a lot of, why? He was human. Yes, he was divine and he was human. And he had human expressions and interactions. All right? So if he couldn't do it, I probably can't either. So what am I to do? What I am to do is notice the judgments that I have and where they take me. And imagine. So if you're this week, or any time, but especially this week since it's this week, if something makes you nervous, you got something on the horizon that you got to do and you don't know how it's going to work out. Ask yourself, what if the absolute bottom fell out? What if everything went completely sideways? What if? Would you be all right? Would you be all right? Would you have somebody to call? Would you have some people to stand with you so you didn't stand alone? Would you be okay in the long run? And if so, then realize you don't need everything to fall apart to test your value, to test your place, or to test the degree of love that's coming at you out of the stratosphere, You don't need to have that happen. And because you don't need to have it happen, you don't need to dread it happening. And because you don't need to dread it happening, you can take all that energy, all that vibration, and dedicate it in a new direction. Have greater peace in your heart. And watch the clouds lift. Watch there be greater focus. Wally Amos set up a cookie store on Sunset Boulevard because you know what? He had no control whatsoever over if anybody would eat his cookies, buy his cookies. And that wasn't what he was in it for. He was in it to bake them and make people happy and see what happened, and it worked out. So we place our attention in the area that it's most effectively to go, which is the trust in a process of creation, always growing from the ground up, growing through you, growing out into wherever, into the clouds, beauty and wonder. So let's know together now, one life, one power, one presence, one reality, everywhere, all the time. Made this beautiful day today, made this hot summer that we're in, made this variety of human opinion that we hear and express our own voice into. Made this place, this teaching, these godlings who surround us, made all of this, and it knows what it's doing, and we know what we're doing. We know whence we come. We know whither we go. There is a mind and heart at work here, doing that which ought to be done, expressing through us as we do that which ought to be done by us. All things are working together for good. And when that good is not immediately evident, all things are still working together in refinement, in preparation, in acceptance. Trusting this is so, trusting the process, I joyously release this word now into that operative principle that always says yes and means it and delivers on this word. Thank you, infinite presence of life. Mother, Father, God, that this is so, and so it is.
You know, the weekly email is really the place to go because there's so much information on there. And when I scroll through this one, I mean, this week there is loads and loads of information. One thing I wanted to mention was that if you scroll to the end of the email, you'll find a couple of things. You'll find a summary of each Sunday's talk by Reverend Jesse. And that's done courtesy of David Lamaster, who's one of our practitioners, so thanks to him. And there's also a treatment at the end. If you scroll the way down, you'll find out. I'm just coming up right now. This thing is so long. There's a treatment on personal dominion. So check the whole. Don't just look at the top of the email. Go all the way down. If you're not getting the email, please subscribe to it because we won't spam you. You'll just get the email. Your email won't go to anybody else. And I can promise you that. Reverend Arthur is speaking next week. And Reverend Jesse spoke about him. But if you've never seen Reverend Arthur, he doesn't stand in one place on here when he talks. He will be all over this stage, and you will not go to sleep. I promise you, you will not go to sleep. In addition to getting a great message, you will be awake the whole service. Even if you normally nod off to sleep during this service, you won't do it then. I can promise you that. There's a couple more things I just want to highlight. We have something going on pretty well every day of the week. Check the email. Two things I want to highlight. One is our sacred activism, which I've not been able to join yet because life got in the way, and that's on Thursdays. Please check that out. And also the one that Reverend Jesse was referring to is called Philosophy Friday. And if I'm not mistaken, there were like 14 or 15 of us on there on Friday. And it's really a great discussion group where you can get questions answered and there will be themes. It's really a good thing to look out for. So look for that in the email. And everything else you need to know is really in here. So as we come up to giving time, I just want to thank everybody for their generosity. Please continue to support us because it costs money to keep our center running. It costs money for all of our tech, the air conditioning, etc. So we appreciate all of your monetary donations. And we appreciate everything everybody does, whether you're a practitioner, a minister, you're a member of our music group. We truly appreciate all of you. So, and as Mark gets ready to come out, do we have anybody here for the first time? I don't think so. No? I think you've all been here before. Okay, so welcome back. And let's all say together, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
All right. Now, since the theme of the day is roots, I'm going to give you a little bit of tree trivia that I know, in that if a tree is cut down, the other trees around it, or if a tree falls down, if the stump remains, the other trees around it can feed that stump and keep that stump alive through the roots. So, that's the amazing thing about trees. They literally do take care of each other. And they talk to each other. Maybe about us, and that's a little scary to think about. That's why I hug the tree right outside my front door anytime there's going to be weather. I literally do. It's a ginormous pine tree, and I go up to it and I pat it and I say, I love you. I want you to be healthy. Please stay straight during this weather, and if you decide to go down, please go that way. So, not, towards the house. So, just for a brief minute before we go into treatment, what I'm going to invite you to do is to imagine yourself as a tree. All right? Because we have a phenomenal trunk, right? That's what we are. We are a trunk of a tree. Where you are sitting right now, imagine your roots growing down into the ground. And think of all of the things that the roots do. They nourish you. They bring water up into you. They hold you, especially when the winds get high. Now, go ahead and imagine your branches growing up into the sky with that full canopy of gorgeous green leaves that capture the sunlight and feed you. But they also dance in the wind and rustle so that they sound like they're talking to us. Stretch all the way up into the heavens. And as Jesse pointed out today, with those roots, reach all the way down into the heavens. And know that you are being nourished at both ends. And you are being held strong by those roots. That there is one life, one presence, one power, one love. And I am a divine expression of that power. I am a channel for that love. I am that presence. I am living that life, just as I know that each and every one of you do as well. And that as we are held by our roots and nourished by our roots, that is what lets us stretch up into the heavens. That allows us to reach out and dance in the wind. That allows us to rustle in that beautiful language that happens just under the hearing, where we tell each other that we love each other with our actions, with our looks, with our bodies, where we see each other as the godlings that we are, ever reaching, ever growing, seeking both up and out as well as down and in. And bringing into our experience that which we know to be good. And bringing into each other's experience love. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. I am grateful for a teaching that teaches me that while I may have made a mistake, I am not a mistake. I am a beloved expression of the divine, and I can choose again. That life is a choose-your-own-adventure novel. And we are allowed to back a couple of pages up if we need to. And I am grateful for a community that comes together to remind each other who we are. I am grateful for our practitioners, our ministers, our musicians. I am grateful for each and every one of you. I am grateful for the technology that allows us to broadcast this out into the ether. And I am grateful because grateful is just another word for love. And I relax and release my word with love into the law, knowing that it is done. And so it is.
So it is.
Say it with me now. Something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it.
I trust it.
I use it.
I use it.
And I love it.
I love it.
So it is.
So it is.